folks. Let's see what we got. Hopefully we can be heard. Hopefully that's a thing that can happen here. You're making coffee? That's exactly what I just did. I made 2 cups of coffee, Leonardo. So how can I say that in Spanish? Is it Spanish or Portuguese? I apologize. I know one thing in Portuguese, which is bom dia. That's all I know. But I made myself 2 coffees. It's thirsty work talking. When I'm teaching, it's just constantly drinking something and then trying to run to the bathroom between classes, but students keep stopping you from doing that. Oh my gosh. This has been quite a summer. And it hasn't improved. It's just gotten weirder. And I'm in the middle of stress, depression, distressing. No, distressing sounds like you're de-stressing. Stress, whatever. Depression with stress. So I'm just trying to stay on top of things, trying to, just work and wake up on time and all that good stuff. Scott asks, how old are your students? I have older teenagers, although I guess the youngest, maybe 14, and the oldest, like 18. Yeah. I've occasionally had some students that are older, like 19 years old. I think one was 19 and then 20. But yes, as far as it is, it's high school. I have taught adults. Really don't like teaching adults. Adults have, like on the one hand, there's a lot of stuff you can just talk to them about that they will totally understand. There's a lot of topics that teenagers don't necessarily get, like budgeting, for example. If you're talking about budgeting and words for budgeting, talking about living paycheck to paycheck or something, that's not something a teenager's really going to understand, especially teenagers that come from families that have a lot of money, but adults can understand it. However, there's also adults that are very stubborn, stuck in their ways. So the main example I like to give for this was an older guy. I would say, I mean, he wasn't so much older than me, maybe 50, 54, and we were talking about superstitions. So that was the topic of discussion for that class day was superstitions. And we talked about different superstitions like the number 4 in China, Japan, and Korea, because it sounds similar to like an old word for death. There's writing your name in a red pen means like you're gonna die. The number 4 one is interesting because it's similar to 13 in Western cultures. So some of the buildings don't have number 4, especially hospitals. So it'll go from either 1, 2, 3, 5, or the floors go 1, 2, 3, F5, which is very interesting. So there's those. But then one of them we talked about was fan death, which if you don't know, it's this superstition that only exists in South Korea. It's this idea that if you turn on a fan, but you close all the doors and shut all the windows, that you'll die. And it depends on who you ask. Some people say it sucks all the air out of the room. You die from hypothermia. It's impossible to breathe with a fan on your face. So you die from suffocating, just things like that, which not true. So this guy, we were talking about fan death, and some of the other people believed it. This guy really believed it. So we kind of talked about how these things are not possible. Like if the fan is, sucking the air, well, it's just blowing it back into the room. It's not doing anything. It's not deleting the air. You know what I mean? And then for hypothermia, I mean, I'm sure all of us, and I always give this example, have you ever been sitting in front of a fan in like your underwear in the summer and you're still thinking, oh my God, it's so hot? the fan cannot lower your body temperature enough to reach hypothermia. Hypothermia is like jumping into an icy river in Russia in the winter. Then you can get hypothermia. But being able to sweat while you're in front of a fan, it's not cold enough to lower your body temperature enough. And so the other students were like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense, okay. But this one guy was so upset, and he was so mad. He's like, Korean people aren't stupid. Never said that. And he said, and I always give just ridiculous superstitions from Western culture too, just to show like we're not picking on Korea for having superstitions. It's a human thing. But he was really upset, and he said, well, why don't you go home and you sleep with the fan on and see what happens, which to him was basically saying, kill yourself. To which I said, I do, and so does pretty much the rest of the world. And also, there's been a fan on in this room for pretty much the whole hour we've been here. The door's been shut. There are no windows. It's quite a small room. It was a really small room. I said, and all of us are still alive. He never came back. He was so angry. So angry. He also believed that babies can't die in hot cars because they have a mechanism to regulate their body temperature, and that they die from suffocation. That's what they die from if you leave them in a hot car. And I'm like, have you ever driven by something that smelled really bad and all your windows are up but you still smell this bad smell from outside? He said, yes. I said, that's because your car is not airtight. Neither is this room. Oh, no, babies have their bodies regulate. I'm like, babies can't even eat honey. These things are not regulatory engines, But he was super, super angry. Dragon asks if I teach English. I used to teach English. I teach social studies in English for students that are trying to transfer to schools like universities in places like the US or Canada. So I teach social studies now. The fan thing is particular to Korea. As far as I know, not just Korea, but South Korea. I'm not 100% sure how prevalent this is in North Korea, because electricity is not that prevalent in North Korea. Bless. Pyongyang still has daily blackouts as far as I know for like 1 to 2 hours. So I'm not exactly sure how prevalent it is in North Korea. But as far as I know, this is a superstition that only exists in Korea. Yeah. No black color in bedding. Well, that's too bad. Why not? That one I haven't heard, Obyung. Why is that? For me, it's because the cat hair, but I still love black. So, and I still love my cats. Speaking of, last second, as I was walking into the room before starting this live stream, Krampus ran in here. So there's this mattress. It's like a guest bed, but it's vertical just to keep it out of the way. And he's just on top of this thing. The cats like to go on top of it. So, because North Korea, you don't need to say more. Lunch break live stream starting up again just today. Not doing normal work. So yeah, I should mention, yes, today we are all off of work because of a typhoon. So, yesterday it was like pouring rain, and so the Ministry of Education was like, all right, if your school has like this type of student, you have to close. If it's got this type of student, you have the option. So we just closed, right? It's pretty nice outside. There's no rain. There's some clouds, but otherwise beautiful blue skies. It's not windy as far as I know. There might be a breeze. I haven't opened the door, but just looking outside, and the trees are not horizontal, which is interesting. The other interesting thing is that these typhoons are caused in part by like low pressure systems, and those do affect people with chronic pain such as migraines. So it's like I can feel that there's something going on, but visually there's nothing. So I took a bunch of my medication before this. We'll see. what happens, but I'm not 100% sure how long. I'm hoping that we can do this for just, at least an hour. Yeah. To me, this is a midnight break. Yes, I'm trying to think for everyone else about what time this would be. But yeah, this is my lunch break. Breezy where you are, nearly clear skies. I'm glad they went ahead and closed rather than risk keeping everything open like they did last time. Right, and it's it's one of those Murphy's Laws things where if they would have kept it open, then it would have been, really damaging. A friend of mine who works in Korea, their school didn't want to close because some of the kids live right near the building and some of the teachers lived across the street from the building. And to me, that's just the school trying to be sneaky. The Ministry of Education's like, if you have young children in your school, like under, like 13 years old and under, your school needs to close. And so for them, these are like kindergarten, first graders. These are kids that are around 8 years old. They need to close, but they're like, oh, we can, So I told her, oh, well, ask them about it and then say, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that if we lived a certain distance from the school, we still had to go. I'll make sure to call the Department of Education to ask for further guidance on that. So, somehow, maybe. Because, don't try to be sneaky. Because if it was really bad, they could get injured just walking across the street. You know what I mean? Are typhoons as common as hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean? I don't know if I would say they're as well. I think they've increased since I've been here, so maybe they are as common. But yeah, they're a similar thing, just a different location. And then if you're in Australia or New Zealand, they're called cyclones. So that's just the thing. Yeah, it should be on the south or the east side, but they just kind of put a general warning out for the whole country, just to be safe. They did. Oh, and we keep getting updates. So there's another update. A lot of these places are kind of flooding, so these are the updates that I'm getting. And my brilliant self, like with the iPhone, you can make your own vibration pattern. So mine is the, what's it called? The Terminator kind of theme. Da-da-da-da-da, that thing. So it's, other people get like a zzz, 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 and it's over, but for me it's da-da-da-da-da. Times 3, so that's a little bit longer. And it kept waking me up. I've been very exhausted, so I keep going to bed 8:30, 9 o'clock, and just kept getting these updates about, oh, this place is closed and this other junction's closed and you got to stay away from this other place because that's closed too. And I'm just thinking, I'm not going anywhere, just leave me alone. Let me go to sleep. I'm here by myself, But it's my choice to keep the emergency things on, and I keep them on. I think they're important to have on. Yeah. The Gyeongsang province had to evacuate some 200 families. Yikes. That is I'm glad they're being proactive about it. We don't want to have severe damage. This is based on the categorization that Korea does for their typhoons. There's like 4 categories, and this is 3 out of 4, so it's the second most dangerous or destructive type. Yeah. Hello, Shugul. Nice to see you. What should I say? Assalamu alaikum? Something like that. Forgive my accent. But yes, greetings all the same. Gosh, it's always like, what, 1, 2 a.m.? I wonder what you do for work that you're up at 1 and 2 a.m. all these times. I'm looking at the shirt here in the camera. I don't know, it's cool, I guess, but I always feel like, I don't know, Rodney Dangerfield when I wear this. That's all right. I'll make some jokes about my wife or something and then call it good. You work from home, teaching online. Oh, that sounds like fun. Teaching what? To what age group? Because teaching online can be interesting, or it can be really annoying. If you have to teach the little kids, like a big group of younger people, that can be quite annoying. I really hated when we had the COVID online teaching stuff, and the parents thought we, the teachers, were somehow being lazy by teaching from home. Okay, number one, none of us want to get COVID from your kids, right? But number two, it's harder to teach online. You know, it's harder, and the parents blame the teachers for everything. So their kids, like their kid would sleep in. They would just sleep in. So school started, the kid is still asleep in bed. And they would get mad that the school didn't give them a wake-up call. How come you didn't call to wake up my son? Why didn't you wake up your son? Or their kid will be, you know, looking at me on the Zoom camera. I'm looking at them, and we're having a lecture. I'm sharing my screen. We're showing the slides. We're having a time, and then, you know, their kid will be doing something else. I don't know. They're muted. You know, I don't know what they're doing. So they'll have something like they're watching YouTube or something instead of paying attention to my lesson. How am I supposed to know that? But then we get these complaints that the teachers aren't controlling their kids well enough. Remember, these are not 6-year-olds. These are like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. If they haven't figured out at this point, you know, that their child is now becoming an adult and is responsible for their behavior, that's quite, yeah. Teaching adults in earth sciences, history, and such. I teach in a very particular niche. Oh, that's interesting. First time catching a live stream actually live. Well, welcome, Ergo Comics. I hope you have questions and you want to ask them. That's always fun. Shugel says, why didn't Jungha wake up? Where's Hung Young? Lee? I don't know. I did not birth them. Yeah, basically. It's amazing how hands-off these parents are, and then they complain that the school isn't parenting them correctly, basically. You know, it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with my own kid. Girl, what makes you think I want to deal with him either? I am here to teach him history. I am not here to make sure he got dressed on time. That is not part of my thing, okay? You know, and it's like you have to teach them some basic human manners sometimes, because I refer to it as the kids are not socialized properly. They're just not. Like we had a student that was just throwing snacks on the ground because they wanted to mess with the students that have detention. We started making them do like lunch duty, which means my lunch is gone. Like I don't get to eat lunch when I have to do detention. I'm the detention teacher, and so was the other military teacher. What a surprise, right? So we don't get lunch basically, which sucks. So we're just watching these kids and making sure they're doing their duties and whatever. So one of the friends wanted to kind of mess with the other friend by making more trash and throwing this stuff on the ground. So they took their snacks and just started like throwing pieces of their snack on the floor. Their friend was like, I'm not picking that up. And they said, oh, you have to. You're the one doing lunch duty. And so this lady, the cleaning lady, started to bend over to pick it up. This lady is already working hard. She's elderly. She is sweating. And it was not hot in that room. She was just working so hard she was sweating. And I stopped her. And I told the student that was throwing this stuff, I was like, do you see what you're doing? You're sitting here trying to have fun with your friend, and you're sitting here complaining about everything. This look how hard she's working. She is sweating. This lady's old enough to be your grandmother, and she's gonna sit here and get on her hands and knees and pick this stuff up because you decided to mess around by wasting your snack. Pick it up right now. Like this to them, this is just fun. You know, it's fun to mess with workers. It's fun to do that. It's okay. That's their job. That's what people pay them for. They're just there to clean up after me. That's how they behave, you know. They'll make a mess in the bathroom that they should clean up. Oh, but it's somebody else's job. Whatever. Ha 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 ha. Whatever. Like this is like a lot of the students, unfortunately. So you got to be very stern with them and just kind of remind them, like, why aren't your parents socializing you properly, you know? And of course it's not all the students, you know, but it's enough of them, you know. They have no basic respect. I don't think they're trying to be disrespectful. I think it's more of just like being unable to realize that other people exist and that other things happen. So like for me, I had a very you guys know that in the past there was the death of a family member, and we got some more information about that, that was both good to know but also you know, just a reminder, and this was really troubling, you know. And I mentioned it, you know, to my students, and you know, they're okay, you know, basic, okay. But then they just kind of go right back to not even saying a greeting to you. Like when you say, "Hey guys, good morning," silence. "Hey, so how was your day yesterday?" Silence. And you kind of got to remind them, like, you guys know that I'm having a really hard time, and obviously that's not your fault. But when you won't give me like basic human respect, like when is it ever okay when a person, especially with Korean culture, when an adult is talking to you, you just totally stone face, right? You know, that doesn't help my situation. That's why I give you guys basic human respect too, because I don't know, what if you had a really bad weekend? What if you got in a fight with your parents? What if you got in a fight with your friends? You know, what if one of your friends is moving and you just had a really bad time? Maybe you broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend and stuff, and you're just having a really bad time mentally. That's why, even though I'm stressed out, I've got my own stuff to deal with, I'm busy, I still have to give you basic human respect because you're a person, you know. Like, try to do that. But they're at that age where they're transitioning from I'm the center of the world to I have to interact in society, but they need a help in that transition. And when their parents are not there to help them transition for whatever reason, whether it's ambivalence, or they're just busy, or what have you, they're not learning that. They're not learning to make that transition, and they still think, yeah, I'm the most important, I'm the center of the world, you know. Do they treat you differently because you're American? I would say maybe not my students here, but I have had students in the past, especially younger students, elementary age, so maybe between ages 8 and 12. They will respect the Korean teachers before the Western teachers. They think that we're like some kind of weird clown that's there to be there, you know. There have been like darker skinned teachers that a student will get like a wet tissue and try to clean them off. There will be teachers that are kind of hairy. So they'll tug at their beard, they'll tug at their arm hair. Somebody who has like a different color of hair, so not me, but somebody who has like blonde hair, they'll try to grab their hair, pet their hair. If they've got very tight curls, you know, like a 4C type of curly hair, also trying to touch them, trying to pet them, which does happen in the US as well. So let's not forget that Black people in the US are pet because, oh, your hair, oh, and then people think it's okay to put their hands on a total stranger, you know. So this is not just unique to Korea, but I would say more things are worth touching. Younger students will also try to touch your butt, touch your breasts. For the male teachers, look at or touch their penis, and they just do it, you know. And when you try to ask the parent, like, tell your kid to knock it off. Oh, they're just being a kid. Oh, they're only 10. They're 10 years old grabbing another man's penis. This is not okay. Ever. What makes you think this is okay? But there's just that lack of respect that, oh, it's okay for them to be curious and exploring by randomly grabbing your body because you're just a foreigner. You're just kind of here for our use and entertainment. You'll also get people out in the public that will just assume that you speak English. So there's people here from Russia, from Germany, from France. They'll just assume that you speak English and they'll offer you without ever introducing or talking to you. They will like say, hey, do you want to teach my kids English? Or they'll push their child in front of you and tell them in Korean, practice your English with her. And I tell them in Korean, which because they don't realize I understand it, I tell them like, I'm a person, I'm not a textbook. And I just like walk away. You'll also get people that don't understand you. So like just yesterday, I was at the cafe, and because you're not Korean, they assume you speak zero Korean, you understand zero Korean. So when you are speaking to them, they think it's some kind of English that you're talking, but it's Korean, so none of the words make sense, right? And this is not something that's unique to Korea. This happens to foreigners everywhere. So this is not just unique to Korea. So I don't know, maybe about 30-40% of the time this will happen though. And so yesterday I went to order 2 drinks at a cafe, and I told him I needed like the carrier, you know, that cardboard carrier, you can fit 2 drinks. And I told him I needed a carrier. And the worker looked at me and said, what? And I said, I need a carrier. I said it again in Korean. And my accent is fine. You know, it's not like overly, American sounding. And the guy was really confused, and so he got his manager. His manager, he's like, she wants these 2 drinks, but then she said something and I don't know what else she wanted. So the manager was like, what else did you need? And I said to the manager, I need a carrier, please. And the manager looked at the guy and she was like, a carrier. Like, to just repeated it. She's like, that's what she, like, how, it was like her nice way of saying, you idiot. Can't you understand her? But this happens, or it'll happen where I was trying to buy something and these workers were kind of like younger, maybe 19, 20 years old, giggling and pushing the one that spoke English, apparently. Like, come on, you got to speak to her. And it's just like, did you even ask if I spoke Korean? Did you ask, try to say, like, can I help you in Korean? And then see if I could respond? If I responded in English, yeah, get the English speaker or something, or, point, or I don't know, we'll go from there. But why don't we start first with, can I help you? And then see what happens. So I ordered everything in Korean, and just their faces are just, oh. Yeah, your language it's not like some alien language where you have to like flay your tongue 20 times in order to speak it correctly. This is just another human language, right? And I'm not like fluent in Korean. I don't want to give that impression. But at the same time, this idea, like, I know some of my students know I've been here for 11 years. And they're like, oh, you can speak Korean? You can read Korean? Korean is like one of the easiest languages to read. It was specifically designed to be easy to learn to read. Of course I can read it. How? What? So yeah. So this is, hopefully that's your answer. Also, Dragon, for strange Korean men, usually older men, they will try to follow you home because they think that all Western women will just have sex with them. So there's just been men that just try to follow me home. And, I try to be polite, try not to read too much into the situation. But when I realize, like, what's happening, I use my Marine Corps voice, which is a very sharp, sudden bark sound almost. And their whole body language just suddenly changes. I use really rude kind of conjugation with them. And they just immediately walk away, which is great. which is great. But at the same time, it's also led me to, like, whenever there's somebody else in the elevator and I have to go to my floor, I always pretend I'm going to a different floor. Like, I'm just worried that people are going to follow me home, you know? Or we had somebody in our apartment building was playing really loud, thumping type of music that I guess was similar to rap or something. And the neighbor tried to blame me that, oh, it sounds like something a foreigner would do. They're playing it at noon. And so the guard spoke to me. I'm like, I'm at work. Nobody's in my house. Is it my cats jumping around? And no, they said it's music. I said, yeah, I've heard the music too. I think it's in the floor, like above us, or like over, you know, like above and over, right? Like above our floor. But they just assumed it was me, especially because, you know, one of my friends is dark skinned who had come by, and perhaps they saw that person and just thought, oh yeah, you know, that's what they're doing. So when I went to go talk to the people about it, just to apologize, because there are sometimes when people get over, like, really aggressive with their neighbors, and it's just something I didn't want to deal with. So, you know, I spoke to them, like, wearing a very, like, older woman, like middle-aged Korean woman fashion, you know, just trying to look like very non-threatening, you know, like somebody's auntie, you know, and saying, oh yeah, sorry, it's not me, but, you know, my friend was here, we heard it too, it was really loud, we think it was like the person above and over one, so, you know, maybe we can try to talk to them, just trying to speak really quiet, calmly and sweetly, so they don't get this impression that, you know, I'm just this, you know, when am I going to listen to loud music? I got migraines and I'm at work. You know. Let's see. You should tell them the U.S. will pull all troops if they misbehave. I mean, that's such a dick move. This is just heavily bringing us into an entire new world. I mean, if you know, Shogo, if you go to another country, you're gonna, you know, I think any country where your ethnicity is not the majority, especially if you don't look like the average person, you're gonna run into the same problem, which I think you probably may have. Let's see. Leonardo says, when you expect someone to speak one language and they speak another, it's sometimes hard to understand. Right. You know, most people are okay with it. There are some times when I'm waiting in line to order something, and person's in front of me, they order something, and it's me, it's my turn, I'm behind them, I take a step forward, and I'm about to be like, hi, I would like to order, and they just look past me to the Korean person behind me and, like, speak around me like, are you ready to order? I mean, obviously not a ghost, like, you can see me, you know, so, yeah, but that'll happen occasionally. I would say maybe 5 to 10% of the time, or they just will ignore that you're there waiting, things like that. Sometimes they'll just guess what you want. So we went to my boss and I, we had like a walking meeting. We went to a gongcha, which is like a bubble tea place, and you gotta order, you know, your bubble tea with more or less, you know, ice and sugar and everything. And so he was saying, you know, he doesn't want any sugar in it. He just wants regular milk tea, no of the boba, less ice, you know, no sugar, whatever. And she just put full sugar, put the boba in there. She did all of this because she just guessed, whatever. Yeah. You know, and we were speaking Korean. You know, it's not like we were saying, hello, I would like less sugar, please. You know, it wasn't anything like that. You know, if you're not sure, ask, but don't charge somebody money for something that you're just guessing, you know, whatever they want, you know what I mean? So it's, yeah. The accent does matter. Absolutely. I remember I got into a taxi with my friend, and we were going to a place called Techno Mart. So there's like some of these tech malls, I guess you can call them, and they're just these big tech malls, and there's a few of them around the country. And so we were going to one. It's called Technomart, and so I said, Technomart 가주세요, and that means like please take me, or let's go please. And the guy was like, and I was like, Technomart 가주세요, like a little bit slower. And so I looked at my friend, we looked at each other, and maybe we said it one more time, and he still didn't get it. And I said, Technoma트 가주세요. Oh, Technoma트, okay. And I just thought, if you can't pronounce the R, why are you going to name it something that has an R in it? So Mart, no. Ma트, okay. I know someone who has the same problem in Japan, especially with like the long vowel, short vowel thing. So like if they want coffee, it's like ko-hi. Both of the vowels have to be long. But if you say ko-hi, they don't know what you're saying. And if you say ko-hi, they also don't know what you're saying. And maybe if you know, and she was telling me, like, I can kind of understand that if you're just speaking the word out of nowhere. But in the context, we're in a coffee shop. The rest of the words they understood, 1 cup of ko-hi. You can guess they're probably trying to say coffee, you know? So she was like, how come some people just can't guess context? You know, that's another one. So you have to speak. When a couple friends of mine, they came to Korea in the aughts, the zeros. And they came here, and one thing they mentioned was that their English got worse. And I thought, that's weird. You're teaching English. How does that happen? This is how. Like, you have to learn how to speak English with a Korean accent so people can understand you. Matsu. Okay, you know. Gotta be careful with that. Yeah. But I'm trying to think if there's like, I'm sure there's Korean words like that. Like tteokbokki, that's not how you pronounce it. Kimchi is not how you pronounce it. I guess it's close enough. Kimchi and tteokbokki, but you know, I don't know. Hello, Wayne. We were just talking about language stuff. Shugul had mentioned, I think I read this already. Have you forgotten your Korean? That must have been hilarious. You know what? I've said that before. I'm like, I'm speaking Korean, right? And I've asked that, like, I am speaking Korean, right? You know, can you hear me or whatever? Yeah, when I got that news about what happened with my family member, though, I was really like distraught, and I went to go get something to eat, and I was trying to tell them I don't need a bag, and so I said it, and they're like, huh? So I said it again a little louder, and they said, huh? And like, I had a bag in my hand. Like, can't you tell this is what I'm trying to say? And so I just said it even loud, like really loud, and like long, you know, like, so, you know, like you put the staccato kind of to your word, like, I don't need a bag, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm just like shaking my back, like I'm sitting here trying not to burst into tears about this information that's processing in my head, and now this is the time that I gotta run into somebody that doesn't understand Korean if it's coming out of somebody's mouth and that person doesn't look Korean, you know. So that was frustrating. I felt bad afterwards. You know, it's not like I wanted to yell at them, but at the same time, pull your head out of your butt so you can hear me better. Yeah. Pull your head out of your passive racist butt so you can hear me better. Do you think it's because they truly don't understand, or that they're just being nasty to you because they can? You know what, there's a phrase, I forget how it goes exactly, but it's like, don't assume malice where incompetence could suffice. So I just don't assume that, you know. I remember I used to assume like people really were thinking really bad things about me, and I was explaining that to a therapist that I was seeing. I used to walk with a cane. I'm on a good type of medication now, so I don't need a cane. Some days I wish I still had it, but otherwise I'm ambulatory, self-ambulatory. And I thought people were really judging me because of that. So I remember going to my therapy appointment. I was really mad. It's like a lot of people were looking, and I told her, I know that they're thinking this, that, and the other thing. And she said, well, how do you know they're not thinking, wow, that's a pretty young woman? And I was like, oh, please, come on. I know they're thinking, da, 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 da. And she said, can you read people's minds? And I was like, what? No, of course not. What a weird question. She said, well, I mean, if you're going to pretend, you may as well make it good. I can't argue with that, So I mean, I don't know if they're just being racist or they're just being ignorant. I'll just assume they're being ignorant, because I don't know. May as well just assume the nicer one. Sometimes when people look at me, I just think, I get very self-conscious. Besides, I know that we're having this video thing, right? But for me, remember, it's just me by myself with Krampus looking at a computer and text. And of course, I value and appreciate you guys, and I understand that you're all individual people. You're not just like text on a screen. But at the same time, I'm in a room by myself, right? So I'm not interacting physically with people. And I don't like people looking at me very much, which is I know I teach. It's a very strange thing. I just love teaching. So when people are staring at me on the street, I get very uncomfortable. I really don't like it. And I have to tell myself sometimes, girl, they just think you're a model, something like that. That way I don't get so in my head about why are they staring at me, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with me, and going into that weird spiral. So that's what I just tell myself. Oh, they just think that you look like a movie star, or they're just jealous of your makeup today, Let's see. Japan is like that too. There are foreigners, Westerners who speak Japanese more fluently than English, and sometimes the workers at the restaurants don't understand them. Yes, I remember watching a video that was about that. How this guy was like born in Japan, and he had some friends that all lived in Japan and spoke Japanese fluent. They all spoke fluently, and so it was a skit where this lady was trying to take their order. And they're trying to tell her what they want, and they're going into this thing like, how come nobody is listening to us in Japanese? We speak Japanese. I know I don't look Japanese, but I am half Japanese, and I was born in Japan, and blah, blah, blah. I'm from this prefecture where we have, tuna and peanuts or something, like, he was trying to talk about how great his prefecture was, whatever. And after they go into this, like, very emotional explanation of how hard it's been for them to be taken seriously as Japanese speakers, the Japanese server was just like, hamburger? So, okay. Yeah, they were just like, oh, fine, hamburger. So, let's see. Lee, in order to pronounce my true name, your tongue must be removed and your esophagus dilated. The assumption of the exotic. Right, exactly. Leonardo says, now I wonder how the Marine's voice is. It's sharp. I don't want to do it because my neighbors would hear me. Basically it's like a bark. It's like a dog bark. You see a dog and you don't expect it, and then suddenly there's this sharp noise the dog makes. It's like that. It's very unexpected. And that's part of the point, is to catch the person off guard with just how sudden your voice volume, and it's almost percussive. It's supposed to stun the person. It's not like a weapon, but it's like almost like you're supposed to be able to sharply do it, and people, they kind of freeze up because it kind of scares them when that's the point. Let's see, you have to write English words in Korean first and then read them like the Koreans do. Right. Oreo is one of those. Oreo cookie. But the O is O. The R is the E in Oreo, it's written as eh. Because that's what it is sometimes. But in this case, it's an E sound. Oreo. And Koreans have an E sound, but they won't write it down that way. And then the O again. So it's oreo. And that's how you would have to do it. Thanks, Brad. It's been very, I describe it like a layer cake where all of the cream layers and the frosting on the top, it's anger. There's sadness and anger and joy and anger and relief and anger. It's just covered in anger. So it's a very, it's difficult because I found out the information right before I had to teach, third period, and I just collapsed. Anytime big Marine learning how to deal with stress, anything that had to do with my sister, like every time we did something for the funeral and whatever, I would just collapse into tears like an 18th century duchess. I just can't. My brother just zones out, like he's just, like his eyes are open, but he's not there, So we have a hard time kind of dealing with this, and it's hard to deal with, and the fact that I have to be so busy, haven't really dealt with it, and then over the weekend it's like, well, what is there to deal? Is there anything to deal with? I don't know. I don't know. This is like uncharted territory, so yeah. Wildcard is asking what happened. I don't want to go into it. I'm being intentionally vague, just for privacy's sake, but it has to do with a death in the family, and then there's been more sudden information regarding that death, and things that are going to snowball from that. So I guess that's the best way to put it. It's like, it's sort of like when somebody, like if we think about time as distance, like we think about it as another dimension, right? There was a time where she stopped, and despite the distance of that, having to continue to deal with these new developments, it's like dragging her corpse through time, and it's like a constant reminder that this isn't going away, like ever. And sometimes I can't cry, because I cried when I found this out, and I was wearing the same mascara and it got everywhere. Just telling myself, gotta not do that. Like with somebody, like one of my sergeants died from COVID-19, and it sucks because you have to leave him in that time, that place where he died, if we think of time as a place. But in the case of my sister, because this is developing and continuing and whatever, it's just, her corpse cannot be left behind. And it's still being drugged through time. But it's not doing anything. It's still a corpse. She's still dead. And dragging her is not going to bring her back to life. But it's just I don't know how to describe it more than that. Does it make sense, what I'm saying? Maybe you can't relate to it, and I hope you can't relate to it, but does it make sense? It's hard to put into words. Let's see. Leonardo says, the law of parsimony, the most simple explanation is usually the right one. Don't assume more than is need to understand someone. That's true, but I would also even say, there's no reason to ascribe agency to a person that you don't know, and you're never going to know anyway. Like, I'm not going to know who this, barista is. So there's no reason for me to, assume that she's some bad person that hates foreigners and she goes and, trolls them on YouTube or something, When I was in the U.S. and the people would meet me initially, the words they spoke would be very loud and they would have wide eyes. I would think, has the volume gone up in here? Even after I spoke English, volume was still on 10, eyes larger than plates. It was humorous. Yes. My mom will do that, especially to certain people from like Southeast Asia. She'll or from China. She'll change her English to sound more like what she thinks Chinese English sounds like. And I'm just like, Mom, they've lived here. Because she'll ask them, like, how long have you lived here? It'll be like 15 years. And she'll be like, oh, that thing, da 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 da. And I'm just like, I'm sure they figured out what an American accent sounds like by now. You're not making it easier. She's like, I'm making it easier for them. Okay. Speaking of Marine Voice, used to watch your videos back in the day when you wore your own issue clothes. You still have that old YouTube channel. It's the same channel, actually. It's the same channel. I saw those old videos. I'm not sure if I can just put them back up or if I could just kind of remake them. The reason that they're not here is just after a student found my channel, I thought, all right, there's maybe certain words I shouldn't be saying and stuff, just in case parents something get fired. So would rather not. Hello Apologia, thanks for joining. And yeah, it's a weird one for sure. Hwabyung is a Korean word that describes a simp. Okay. Wildcard says, I'm sorry, my ex-sister-in-law, the mother of my oldest niece, died suddenly last week. It sounds like our week last week was pretty crappy. I'm sorry. Never any sense of closure, it would seem. That's a good way to phrase it, Summer. It's like, even though there's more pieces of the puzzle that are being completed, we're still working on the puzzle. It's not over, you know. It makes sense, but it's always difficult to explain. Yeah, for sure. I wanted to thank you for all the lives you did over the 22 months, the value and companionship they provided during the crisis. I don't believe you know, but outside of my tribe and family, this is the only outside world I would have. Oh. Well, I'm glad this was good for you. Thank you. Have a good night. You too, Wildcard. You too. One thing I don't like about this lipstick is it gets my mouth very dry, and talking doesn't help. I don't know why it didn't show that Apologia, but yeah, I will. What's better to contact you? Twitter or Discord? You know, I wanted to do a nice video today with something, but I thought, you know, it's been a while. I think a live would be better, just to kind of check in with you and to check in on you, because I know that for some of you guys, like Shuggle had mentioned, good night, Cynical, have a good one. You know, for some of you guys, for whatever reason, you are a little more isolated. Maybe going to work is not something you do, like you are on disability. So for a lot of you guys, this is a type of social interaction, you know. So I just, like I mentioned, I took a bunch of my migraine meds and just said, let's do it. I remember one of the first questions in the US. So do you still live in tents? Or I hear that some of you live in trees. How many of you still do that? Shuggle. See, this is... So, new school year started, and the book, the geography book, uses lots of maps. It never explains to the students how to read a damn map. Surprise. So, my, like, lesson 0, chapter 0, first day and a half, whatever. It's us doing maps, and so we talk about different types: political maps, physical maps, the topographical maps, etc. And all of them I use Africa as the continent for these maps. And I asked the students, why am I using Africa? Can anybody guess why I would do that? All of these maps, they're all Africa. We're looking at resources in Africa and the population maps in Africa and all Africa, Africa, Africa. Why do you think that? And there's always one student in every class who gets it. And they say stuff like, because we don't really talk about Africa. Bingo. Okay. We are going to do that. We're going to make sure you guys understand Africa is not a country. It's a whole continent. There's a lot of different resources in Africa. How come some people cannot access those resources? No, it's not a giant desert. Yes, they have cities. No, they don't ride zebras to school. Yes, they have school. You know, so we kind of have to go through that, because just the ignorance, you know. But I mean, there's ignorance about every country. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard stuff about Korea. Have you guys heard stuff about Korea? Maybe I can, you know, see your, maybe you don't believe the stereotype, but you've heard the stereotypes and you want to just know if it's true. Same sugar, you guys were there for me during some really dark times. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I like. You know, this is, especially during COVID, we lost like 500 subscribers. So we were at like 20K and now we're at like 19.5. And, you know, I'm okay with that. I think we have, you know, a smaller community, and, you know, when Sugar jumps in, when Summer jumps in, when Optimistically Cynical jumps in, like we know, like there's a guy that we have that comes in sometimes who has got some interesting stuff he said, and we just let him go. What's his name? Hiram Biffidum, right? So we just let him talk because we know he's got something going on mentally. He's very open about it, you know, and that's our guy. He just says stuff, and sometimes he says stuff and okay, we can reply to it, and sometimes we just gotta let it sit there and just keep moving on, you know. We got that guy, you know. So it's nice. We've got people here that they are, you know, trying to make ends meet. We've got some people that own businesses and they've got just tons and tons of money. You know, it's just such an interesting mix of people, and yeah, I really love it. Let's see. Glad we were here. I felt like it was part of an elite group because everything else got shut down. Every time I got the notifications, I would jump and click it. Thank you, Shogo. I'm glad that was something that was helpful for you. Leonardo says, well, I work from home and they usually have low contact with people, and they usually don't like me much because I don't tend to speak about the same topics. I'm used to that, but sometimes it's lonely. Definitely. So it's always nice to have a place to be a weirdo, right? There's nothing wrong with being a weirdo. And I tell the students that too, like, you know, you guys are going to have fun in this history class because I'm a weirdo. You cannot teach history and be normal. You just can't. And I don't want to be normal. Because the students kind of laugh, and I say, no, it's okay. It's okay to be a weirdo. Have you seen normal? Have you seen it? I don't want to be normal. People going through life, miserable, having jobs that they hate, and not taking care of basic parts of, you know, their health. You know, obviously I've got health problems, but there's a big difference between trying to do what you can and making the best of what you have versus just saying, all right, I give up completely. You know, that's normal. You know, people not treating each other with basic respect and driving like selfish jerks and stuff, that's normal. I'm not normal, and I'm very okay with that, you know. Very, very okay with that. You know, it's a stressful life in some ways, and I'd rather not have that stress, but if that stress is because I'm doing things that I care about, I'm okay with that, you know. That's good. Yeah. Let's see. When people ask me, as an African, what do you say about, buddy, Arabs arrived 1,000 years ago. It's not, and we're not considered African. That's a political framework more than a geographic one. People forget Egypt's north has Greeks, Armenian, Turks, some Arabs, Russians, and French. The south is native Egyptian and Arab. There's no African identity. as such. It's in Africa, but you know, and I tell the students the same thing. There's no such thing as African language or African food, African name, African music. And I ask them, you know, what's the Asian language? What's Asian culture? What's Asian food? There are foods. And then I ask them, where is Asia? And of course, China, Japan, Korea, sometimes Mongolia. People forget Mongolia. I don't know why. It's right there. And then they'll add, well, Vietnam. Forget the Philippines for some reason. Indonesia, Malaysia. Those are the ones they always include. And I'm like, well, what about India? Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine. You know, what about all of these places? These are all Asia as well. So what's the Asian language? What's Asian writing look like? And they just kind of start laughing. I say, exactly. So there's, in the same way, Africa's even bigger than Asia. Like, don't, you know? I mean, not bigger than Asia necessarily, but it's a huge piece of land. Like, it's a lot bigger than it looks like on a 2D map, what I mean. Yeah. Let's see, I really like that we come from so many different countries and backgrounds. The people here bring so much to the table. Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry about the speech to text. No, it's fine. Whenever there's some stuff that's, like, clearly... I don't know. Sometimes it'll sound kind of weird the way it's written. I'm like, probably speech to text. I just assume that. Yeah. You're okay with that, too. That's right. To the weirdos. Africa is a very complex continent with a lot of cultures, even more ethnic differences between them and all of Eurasia. Absolutely. You know, we just talked about the bottleneck, the genetic bottleneck that happened to the Homo sapiens outside of Africa. Inside of Africa, there's huge genetic diversity, you know. I think they forget Mongolia because it doesn't sound like anything similar to Chinese, but it's actually older than Chinese, I think. But China had a bigger influence. I think they just forget about Mongolia because it's... When was the last time Mongolia did something? Do you know what I mean? No offense, Mongolia. You know, like, everyone remembers Genghis Khan, and then what? Okay, now for me, of course, bubonic plague, especially that one that happened in December 2019, when bubonic plague was, I think people ate raw marmot, and I just remember thinking, haha, what are we gonna get? More bubonic plague? Oops. January 2020. But you know, that's the thing. Like, Japan is obviously right next to Korea and has a very disgusting history with Korea, so they know Japan. China has a huge influence, of course, you know, where we get most of our, like, energy, you know, like our coal and stuff. Mongolia? When was the last time you saw a Mongolian person? You know? That's it. But with my spoofer, I did go to Ulaanbaatar, and that was nice on Pokemon Go. So I've got some. They have some good setup there. I like it. That's good. Also, the spoofer, it doesn't work anymore in Russia. So Russia, Niantic turned off all of their Pokemon everything. So, like, Pokemon don't spawn there anymore. What else? There's no Pokestops. There's no gyms. You cannot play Pokemon Go in Russia anymore. Which sucks because obviously, you know, who's playing Pokemon Go? Probably not Vladimir Putin. You know, you're not, like, personally pissing him off, right? The other thing, though, is that there was a special regional Pokemon that was hard to find, like, in the north, but it was easier to find, like, in part of Russia. Can't get them anymore. I guess if you could find them in Canada, but, yeah, you gotta be in that, like, boreal forest region. Yeah. So, he's harder to catch. Asia continent is like 60% of the world's population. It's massive, but Africa is not far behind. Right. It's really like a misunderstanding of just how how big it is because of the map. And so I try to explain to them by saying, like, if you peeled off my skin off of my face and pulled it into a rectangle, which part of my face would get smaller? You know, oh, your nose, right? So I try to help them with visualization. We just did this last week, these topographical maps. I had them draw a map just kind of at random. They had to find it, like copy it from, you know, Google this topographical map of Mexico or Mongolia, whatever. And so they kind of drew it out as this 2D thing. And then we took the clay and then turned it into 3D. Because I realized at some point a couple years ago, they had no idea how to read a topographical map. So when I was pointing and saying, well, where are all the mountains? Obviously this, you know, if we're looking at it from the side, this is a country that does this. They just kind of looked at me like, how do you know from this map? How do you know? And that's when I realized they cannot visualize this. So I got them the clay. And it's a lot of fun. If you guys have like younger kids or teenagers or something, I really recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Do it yourself. It's fun too. It's just fun to take this 2D map and make it 3D. I think it's a lot of fun. So it definitely helps. They totally forget South Asia and West Asia. Heck, even Russia technically is Asia. I tell them Russia, because they're like, is it Europe, is it Asia? And I say, Russia's its own planet. Just ignore Russia. When we talk about Russia, we just talk about Russia. You know, I say technically part of it falls under Europe, part of it falls under Asia, it all falls under Eurasia. But in terms of just a lot of the geography, the culture, I just list it as its own planet. And like the square kilometers of Russia is larger than the square kilometers of the surface of Pluto. I would say that qualifies as its own planet. So that is exciting. My education was lacking in that way. Once I heard a phrase similar to the way you did, and I too threw back my head and laughed. Yeah, and it's okay. You know, I think that's the nice thing about the internet is that we can get certain things corrected. Now, some people are kind of jerks about how they correct it, but also sometimes when I'm writing something out, I don't know what the actual phrase is. I realize I've said it, I've heard it, I've never seen it written. Like the phrase nipped in the bud. I always heard it nipped in the butt. You know, like to pinch somebody's butt so they stop doing a thing, right? Like your parents pinch you so you stop performing a behavior. As opposed to nipping something in the bud so it doesn't blossom or turn into something else, right? Or is it nipped in the butt like a cigarette butt? Because my parents both smoked a lot when I was growing up, and they would like put the cigarette out. So are you nipping it in the bud so it puts the cigarette out and doesn't cause a fire? Is that what it was? So I wasn't even sure what the phrase was supposed to reference exactly. So now with the internet, before I type it out, I'm like, maybe I should look this up. You know, and there's also some phrases, like when I write stuff on the board for my students, I'll tell them, this is a word, guys, that when I type it, I just wait for autocorrect or something to help me out because I don't actually know how to spell. I always forget how to spell this word. Calendar is one, and silhouette is another one. I always try to spell calendar C-A-L-A-N. Cemetery is another one. And I just said, look, I'm not your English teacher. I teach social studies. I don't have to know this. So we kind of do it like that, you know. And then I got to tell them the joke, because with like some of the math stuff, I'm like, so what does this average to? Come on, guys. I'm not your math teacher. Come on. And then someone just sit there looking at me. I'm like, all right, fine. And so I do the calculation. I say, you know, there's that joke that, you know, people shouldn't see your Google search history. But then think about if people had access to your calculator search history. And just the dumb stuff you added up because you were too dumb to think, you know. So that's the embarrassing one, is the calculator history. My view was overly Americanized. I thought Africa being similar to the US, even though there were other countries, I thought it was one overarching oneness to Africa. Yeah, I think that would be a really kind of American view to it, you know, because that is similar to how we have it. And I know that in Korea, you know, there's provinces and stuff here, but there's like a national police. So where if you commit a crime in one city and you go to another city, those cops have to be communicating with each other. Or if you go to another state, you know, those police have to communicate, and then you got to get the FBI involved and all this other stuff. Whereas in Korea, it's just like one police force, and they just have different brand, like different, it's like one hand and different fingers, you know what I mean? So this idea that like you have to, some, you know, some of the true crime stuff or the movie stuff where it's like someone can just go to another state and then be fine, you know, as like a criminal. They're just like, what, why does this happen? Oh, see, because nothing is connected in the US and everything's done on just physical paperwork, and you got to send a fax and all this other nonsense. So that's it. Nipped in the butt. That sounds better than nipped in the bud. You know, and that's the thing, Shuggle, is that no matter how people mishear something, we all rationalize it. Like, to me, there were two ways to rationalize how nipped in the butt made sense for what the meaning of the phrase is. Do you know what I mean? Either you pinch like a kid's butt to get them to stop doing a behavior, or you put out a cigarette butt to stop it from turning into like a wildfire. That's the same meaning, isn't it? So even though it's a totally wrong word, you still like rationalize it, you know? There was one, I saw this on like, it was on a TV show, and somebody said, take it for granted instead of take it for granted. And the person said, take it for granted? What? And the character said, yeah, you know, don't assume that it's set in stone. Yeah, that's how somebody would totally rationalize that, right? Even though it's taken for granted. But they still rationalize it in a way that makes perfect sense. It still fits the meaning of the phrase. So I always think that's interesting how we still, you know, like you did the wrong calculation, but you got to the right answer. You know what I mean? Geological maps are fun too. You end up seeing a lot of information at the same time, topography, faults, etc. Oh yeah, one of my favorite geological maps is the map of cave systems in the United States compared to the map of missing children in the United States, which is creepy, but they overlap. Yeah, they overlap. I struggle to spell purple, Jeopardy, and Chief. Chief is one of them, for sure. A lot of those things I think are connected to how the U.S. developed. It's fascinating. I feel the same way about the word simp. It's completely misused today. It came out of Oakland in '89, and it's the opposite of pimp. Most people using it incorrectly today. Good night, Obyung. Yeah, or another one is, gosh, what was it? Literally. Some people turn literally into figuratively, and I'm just like, we already had a word for that. What do you mean? Yeah, that was weird. We already had a word for that. There was another one. I don't know if this really counts, but poggers. Have you guys even heard of that phrase? I only know that phrase because of my high school students. Poggers. And I'm just like, pogs? Because that was different. That's something totally different. There was another. They keep me current on slang, like to dunk on somebody. Yeah, they keep me very current on this stuff. And I ask them too. Like, I see that you guys are writing this to each other. What does it mean? You know, oh, it means blah, blah, blah. Like mid. I didn't know what mid meant. Like, oh, people like so-and-so, but I think that she's so mid. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then I saw another phrase where it almost looked like the compliment, and it turns out it's just the middle. It's not great and it's not terrible. It's just mid. Oh, so it's like neutral almost. It's just you're not awesome or you're not terrible. Okay, I mean, that makes sense, you know, but if you see it used one way, it sounds like an insult. And if you see it used another way, it sounds like a compliment. But that's what it is. It's mid. Okay. Sounds good to me. Victor Nate, wow, Victor, just jumping in here. Okay, am I scared of dying? No. I've thought about that. And I've thought if I die tomorrow, I feel bad for anyone who has to clean out my room because it's cluttered. But also, there's a lot of stuff for them to take to remember me by. But overall, I would say I've lived a life that, you know, despite the things that I have to deal with, you know, depression and medical problems and stuff, you know, I've lived a life that I'm satisfied with. And if I were to die tomorrow, I would be satisfied with the life that I've led. Yeah. I have made a positive impact on my students, which is very important to me. I have repaired my relationship with my brother, which is just so beloved to me. I wanted to live in another country, and I do. Yeah. So, no, I'm not scared of dying. And I think because, you know, it's such a constant reminder. Like, I always have something to remind me of death. Like, here's one thing, especially after my sister died, I started wearing this ankh. You know, you just tell people, like, if you're frustrated with them or something, you know, you try to smooth things over. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna stop talking to a friend because you're in an argument, right? And you just want to stop talking for like a day just to cool off. Just to say, hey, you know, I'm a little frustrated about this and I don't know how to articulate it, but just know that I still love you as a friend and I don't hate you. I just need a day to think, you know, something like that. You know, or if you find yourself escalating in an argument with a loved one, just kind of pull back and, you know, if we hung up the phone now and then that person died, am I okay with how we left it? You know, so I do try to smooth things over, you know, and so yeah, that's what I try to do. So I would say, yeah, I don't think I'm scared of dying. No. How about you? Are you scared to die, Victor? And what brought that question up? Bibles, missing children. I wonder if there's anything that's the cause of that correlation. Is it with Bibles and missing children? Because I know the cave systems is one. Krampus the cat or the dark side of Santa Claus. He's both. He's a jerk. Every time he meows too, because he'll talk to me. We just have a yes no thing. Like, Krampus, are you, you know, whatever. Meow. Okay. But if he really wants my attention, every time he meows, like, his face, like, he gets like, he looks angry, but he's just trying to communicate. The Mandela effect. Which part is the Mandela effect? What was that in reference to? Sugar says, to be honest, that one bothers me. So you were lying for your teeth the other times, and now you've come clean. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I don't like that one. For me, I try to use to be honest when if somebody's asking you something, and normally it's something that either has a very set answer or it has an answer that is more socially acceptable, but that's not the answer that you want to give. So for me, like, when people talk about having children and whatever, I would say something like, to be honest, I think that not everybody should have kids, you know. That would not be a socially acceptable answer, but, you know, and I don't judge people for having kids. I just think, is there a better way to do it? You know, like somebody like me, my genetics are something to keep to myself. I don't want to curse somebody with my genes, so I don't. You know, I just don't. So it does make me wonder, like when you see people that have certain genetic traits and they're very insistent on having a quote unquote normal life, you know, honestly, is this something that you really should, you know, why not just adopt? Why, you know, if you know how hard your life is with this genetic issue, why would you have a child of your own? That's what I always wonder. So for me, when I say honestly or to be honest, it's kind of like saying, I am going to be frank with you, even though I know that this is not something that's socially acceptable. It may sound confrontational. So that's why it's just like, I'm not saying this to be confrontational. I'm just saying this to be honest. That's how I use it. But I do hear it a lot from people that are like in like police interrogations. You know, they'll say something, and they'll say, honestly, like for the TCAP stuff, for the To Catch a Predator. So they get these guys that were having these like sexual chats with people they believe to be minors. And then they'll say stuff like, honestly, I just came to the house to tell her I wasn't going to come, you know, or to be honest, I just wanted to see if I could be a mentor. Like, no, no, you're not. So yeah. She was a good human. Krampus speaking from a lectern at Lee's funeral, eulogizing while trying to create hagiography. Krampus will be... What would he do? He would just yell, I think. He would be the one that yells the most. Crook would lay on the coffin, I think. Crook would try to snuggle with me. That's what I think. I think if you were to find me having died in my sleep, Crook would be like glued to me. He's the cat that knows when I'm having a migraine, and he will sleep with me as I'm resting. Like he'll just rest with me. Yeah, he just does. Doesn't do it when I'm not having a migraine. Doesn't usually sleep with me, or he'll sleep next to my feet or something. He likes the bed. But when I have a migraine, he is like snuggled right up against me. So I know that he would be the one probably most devastated by my death. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I used to be afraid of death when I was a Christian. I wanted death. Like, I wanted it. I was so convinced that I wanted to go on like mission trips to dangerous areas in hopes that I would die. You know, part of the reason I joined the Marines. Part of it. I know, and I was doing an interview with Beelzebub, and he had asked me something, and I had just thought of it, that if I would have been born into a fundamentalist Muslim family that was, you know, like in favor of stuff like ISIS, I would have been a suicide bomber. Absolutely. Just absolutely. I think when you get somebody who is, you know, ostracized, or they have depression or something, and then you put them into a religion, or I would even say just a cult, where death is beauty, like a beautiful thing, I think that's a recipe for disaster, for sure. I'm not scared of death. I learned to be prepared for that. It's like every day I may even wonder if this is my last day. I do that too. I wonder, you know, is this it? So like sometimes when my students, they say, you know, why do you get so dressed up to go to work? Because I do, and I make fun of them. I'm like, you guys, you know, you're sitting here saying, oh, I want to be a fashion designer, and then you show up with like your social studies old lady teacher dunking on you. Okay. You know, but I'll say sometimes too, well, if today's my last day and I want to at least leave a beautiful corpse. And they're just like, teacher, like, hey, you know, there are many factors in why I choose to dress up, you know. If I got a migraine, they can tell though. Like if it's really bad and it started my day, I'm just like at work. That's it. I don't do my makeup at all. Yeah. Having studied European history and the two major wars, I've looked and I've thought, I understand why Nazi movement had so much grassroots support. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you want, because some people wonder, you know, how could this happen? Because they're just looking at the end result. They're looking at like this, like I guess if you would say like Hitler and the concentration camps, the medical experiments and stuff. If you think about that as like the physical height of the Nazi regime, right? So they're kind of looking at it like towering above them because this is the physical height, you know, to kind of use that play on words. What they don't see is there's a staircase out of view. And the staircase is what they need to be studying, because the staircase is where many of us would take a step. And that's the problem. And so that's why when I'm teaching history, one of the things I emphasize is a lot of patterns in history. And when we learn about these concepts, I try to relate them immediately to something today. Just as a constant reminder, we are not better off, we're not better educated, we're more educated, we have more access to information, but it's not like we're making better decisions. All of this education is not helping us make better decisions for our species, for our planet, for any of that. So when we take these, like something that happened in the past and something that happens today, it's the same stuff, and so I keep pointing that out. And so when we talk about like the rise and fall of different empires and things, eventually, after we've seen a few of them, I say, okay, so this empire fell. What are some reasons that empires fall? Can you predict why this empire fell? And so they'll say, oh, because it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And then I'll just go to the next slides and say, those are exactly it. This is just normal. This is how humans, survive and how humans collapse. This is just how we do it. So if we're talking about extreme views today, what happened 10 years ago? We can't just look at the extreme view right now. We have to analyze it and follow it back in time, and then is there any parallel in other cultures or in history or anything like that? And there always is, So that's what we kind of do, because I think that part's important for them to memorize. Like I want them to have a understanding of a general timeline, which thing came before which other thing. But in terms of like memorizing dates, I don't care. I don't think that's useful for the students to memorize the names specifically of certain empires or certain people. They'll pick it up with repetition, but I don't like test them like, oh, what was the name of the leader that did this, and the other thing. I want them to memorize what the leader did, what was special about the leader's reign, what was special about that. But they don't really need to know his name and his date of birth and all of this other stuff. I just don't think that's important, because to understand what's going on now, I want them to say, oh, well, this new thing is happening. Let's take 2 steps back and look 20 years ago. What's going on there to try to help me understand what's happening today, as opposed to, oh, well, they memorized the date of birth of Hitler and they can't use any of that information they've memorized. Do you know what I mean? If they can learn the concept of the stuff that's happening today, to best understand it, I need to go back in time, then I'm okay. I'm okay with them understanding that. If they can learn what counts as a valuable or a viable source, like what's a source that I can look at and say this is reliable, and what's a source I can look at and say I'm not sure if it's reliable, that's good to know. The date that the Great Wall was started to be built, who cares? And that's what most students hate about history, is they hate the fact they have to memorize so much stuff, but they don't actually hate history. History is the human drama. It's like the story of humans. there's nothing boring about it. It's super exciting, and it's, you know, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. You know, there's power and war and love and struggle and all of this. You know, it's all this dramatic stuff. There's nothing boring about it. So how do you take, and I just resent the fact that history teachers take all of this really super exciting stuff and boil it down to memorize when it started and then memorize when it ended. Memorize the name of the document that this person wrote, and also memorize that person's name and when that person was born, and also when that person died. How do you take the most interesting thing that happened to our species and turn it into a bunch of numbers? That's so boring, and I think that's why so many students like hate studying history for that reason. And then when they take my class, they immediately love it. Immediately. So it's really good. That's why I try to be because I was surprised to find out I loved history. I hated it in school, but I loved history. You know, I love geography. I hated it in school, but I love geography. I think it's super exciting. Why would you take super cool stuff and just be like, okay, so what is the name of this country? What's the capital city? How many countries are in South America? Who cares? Like, what's going on in South America? Like, what's their political situation like? And how is that related to the physical geography? And why do people live near volcanoes if volcanoes kill people? Like, why would you live there? Why would you live next to the coast if there's a lot of hurricanes and stuff? Why would you live there? So, you know, going through that's exciting. That's interesting stuff. But why would you turn it into boring rote memorization that doesn't help anybody, you know? We were talking about weathering and erosion yesterday. And I asked the students to just like look at a picture. Look, this is rain erosion. Here's another picture of rain erosion. Here's another picture of rain erosion. What are some things that you can describe that you see here? Like if you had to draw it, like what would you draw? Describe how your pencil or your brush would move. And some of the students, you know, oh, it's curvy, it's vertical, there's a lot of vertical lines. But most of the students just didn't get the question. So I asked them all, you know, what do you want to major in? And I just asked everybody. A lot of the students in that class said interior design. And I was like, okay, I know that maybe you're thinking geography doesn't really matter. You need to know the climate in the area you're doing this interior design. If the area is prone to humidity, there's just certain materials you cannot use. And if the area is prone to dryness, there are certain materials you don't want to use either. What about ways to make the area feel cooler inside? There are certain materials you can use for that. If the area is hot and dry most of the year, there are certain things that you can use to make it cooler inside, or design it a certain way to utilize the light so then the person, you know, wastes less electricity with lighting or with air conditioning or with heating or those kinds of things. There are ways that you can design interiors in order to do that, and that has to do with geography. So yeah, maybe you don't need to memorize, you know, what it looks like with salt weathering, but you should know that if you're doing any kind of building or design stuff near a coast with, you know, salt water, this is something that could happen. And then I showed him an article from last year about how Korea had built a bunch of solar panels on the side of a mountain. And I immediately got upset. Because why would you do that? This area is prone to flooding and lots of rain. We have a rainy season. We're on the monsoon wind system. We have a rainy season. So, what do you think happened with lots of rain and mountains that are not high enough to like trigger, you know, the rain shadow effect and stuff? These are dirt mountains. like mountains with just lots of dirt. They're not high enough to just be rocks and stuff. It's just a lot of mountains with dirt. So you get a lot of mountains covered in dirt, and it rains a lot. Landslides. And the students were able to predict that. And I said, cool, check out this article. You knowing this stuff, now maybe these guys are like, oh, I'm an engineer. I don't need to know about climate. Okay, I just need to know about how to best put a vertical thing on an inclined surface, okay? You got to think about what the surface is made out of and also the seasons. Because how did nobody think about that? How did nobody think, let's not put a bunch of stuff on the side of a mountain knowing that we get a bunch of landslides? How did nobody think of that? Right? How are we going to wait? This is wasted like taxpayer money. Like, you know? And so when I show that to the students, I'm like, this is why it's important to know this different stuff, because you don't know what you're going to do with your life, you know? You don't know where you're going to build your house, or even going to get to build a house. Maybe you do. You should know what's going on. Are you in a floodplain? Are you in a 100-year floodplain? What does that even mean? You know, these are things that can help you. That's why we don't memorize, like, what does a flag look like? Who cares? Except for Nepal, because it's got that funky flag, you know. And then we show them, like, oh, this is the flag, whatever. But we don't focus on it, you know. Let's see. Shugel says, to understand, I think everyone should read European history first, especially the Age of Reason, 1870 nationalism. Oh, you're talking about to understand the Nazi stuff, yes. Mein Kampf, and then everything slots together immediately. Oh, absolutely. Even with stuff that, because I mean, we even talk about how Jewish people were blamed for causing the Black Death, some kind of curse, or they cursed the water or something. So they had moved Jewish people away because they hated the Jews, you know, and so they moved them away. And because they're isolated, they're not getting sick like everybody else is. So clearly it's the Jews, right? And so this is not, and I tell them, this is not something like Hitler made up, that Jewish people are shifty and terrible, and everyone just kind of went with it. This plays on centuries old stuff, like centuries old stereotypes against Jewish people in Europe. Like this is old, you know. This is so when Hitler found this was just like, this is like anybody saying something about foreigners, you know. And I say, what about foreigners in Korea? You know, we're the ones that are bad, right? And then I show them news articles talking about, you know, Koreans writing about foreigners in a different way than they write about Koreans, like with stuff like spreading COVID, you know. They'll go out of their way to specifically mention an Uzbek church, right? But if it happens with a Korean church, some Korean people, some people, oh, one Uzbek foreigner, you know, what? Who cares? Why do you say that? Now everybody that looks remotely foreign, people are going to treat them differently. Thanks so much, you know. But we're an easy target. I asked them another easy target. They know Chinese people, huge target for just hating on them, blaming for economic problems, etc., you know. And so if another politician comes in and says XYZ, China, a lot of Korean people will be like, oh yeah, I've heard this before. That makes sense to me. Even if it doesn't make factual sense. It's, you know, common sense. It's common knowledge. And that's the same thing Hitler did with, you know, blaming Jewish people. Look at them. They're continuing to do the thing we all know that they've done forever, that we've already hated them for. This wasn't like they were picked at random, you know. When people say we're far better than before, I always say the Sumerians never dropped a nuke, friend. Look at world history as a whole. Yeah, I mean, we've had times where we have improved, and we have times where we take a step back, you know. I think overall, in terms of like scientific discovery, yeah, we're better than before. But you know, those, as you mentioned with nukes, sometimes those scientific discoveries don't don't bring about good things, right? Being able to feed more people sounds great until you realize that we're not giving away food to foreign countries that need it, that are super poor and dying of starvation. We're just eating more. You know, we're getting fat while other people are starving to death, and this is how we've used our brilliant food production increase. You know, great. So we're doing the same thing we've always been doing. We're taking care of ourselves, taking care of our own, and, you know, so what? Everyone else be damned. You know, we're still being very selfish about it. Brilliant teaching philosophy. Thank you, Rocky. I try to be the teacher that I feel like I really wanted to have. When I used to hear a monotone teacher's voice, I used to glance out the window and wonder, should I open the window before jumping from it, or should I go through for maximum impact on the class? Maybe you should just try and just see if the teacher's monotone changes. I read a book called Human Smoke, which is just a lot of transcriptions of speeches, paper news, etc. from World War I to the beginning of World War III. It's the best, probably World War II. It's the best book I've seen from that period. That's interesting. That's probably a really interesting thing just to see how easily it went, you know, how seamlessly things transitioned into World War II. Yeah, there's not a third one yet. Victor says, I used to be scared of it, probably talking about death, not anymore. In fact, I'm welcoming it. I've asked because I've been struggling to live with myself after something I've done. It's really hard to move on from a mistake. That's true, for sure. And of course, you know, I don't know what you've done, and you're very free to be as vague as you want. We respect people's privacy here. For me, like what I do when I'm left with these unresolved things, like unresolved arguments and stuff, and that person passes on, for example. So there's never a way to fix it, or you do something that causes somebody so much harm. I ask myself, because I think part of it is this idea that how could I have been so monstrous as to have caused this, or to be so selfish, or what have you. And so, you know, I ask myself, if I knew at that time, if I could have seen the future and I knew the outcome, would I still have done it? Absolutely not, right? So for example, let's say that I was late for work, and so I was running to catch the bus, and while I was running, I pushed somebody like out of the way, like get out of my way. That person had some kind of heart problem, and me bumping into them triggered a heart attack, and that person died, right? Let's just say something like that happened. Is that my fault? Yeah, in a way, for sure. You know, I definitely triggered that. You could try to say, well, it's not your fault because bumping into somebody wouldn't cause that. Normally, it's really that person's underlying medical issue, but I'm the one that set it off, and yeah, I would feel very directly responsible, for sure. If I would have known that in the past, before I were to push that person, like, oh, get out of my way, you know, don't just stand there, get out of my way, and I were to push past that person, if I knew that I was going to set off their death, would I still have pushed that person aside? No, of course not. So it's not like I did this out of being a bad person, right? I did it out of just needing to get to work fast, and that's just what I thought. It's not like I did it maliciously. A better example might be one of my Marine Corps buddies had ended his life, and we spent a lot of time together, especially during lunch breaks, because he needed to do some stuff with fitness, and I was helping him with that. He didn't have a lot of physical ability. I don't know, I forget what his problem was. So we were doing yoga and stuff instead. And, you know, it was just that. We were just just being friends. You know what I mean? And when he finally got his separation papers, the last thing I remember of him is his really big smile. He said that he's leaving, and he's going to be able to get back to normal life. And they had apparently abruptly cut off his mental health medication. And while that had happened, you can't just stop taking, mental health meds. And he ended his life. And I really blame myself, thinking, like, how did I not even know he was suicidal? Here I was, when other people thought that he was just this, loser guy that's just trying to get out of the military because he can't hack it. I was his friend. And I had no idea that he was, like, suicidal. And I blamed myself for like 10 years that there was something, like, when he left, I just wanted him to have his time to get back into contact with his family and whatever, so I didn't talk to him for a couple weeks, and that's when he did it. If I would have called him, would that have made it better? Why didn't I call him? How come I didn't? And I blame myself for a long time for that. And I had to tell myself that if I would have known this is how he was going to behave, if I would have known this is what was going to happen, would I still have just kind of let him do his thing for those couple weeks? No. If I would have known he had any suicidal thoughts, would I have just not talked about that with him and just let him go do his thing? No. Right? I would have fought for his medical care, and I would have done everything I could, right, to help him out. I didn't know. And I feel like we can't blame ourselves today for something that we couldn't have predicted, that we maybe had our hand in or didn't, right? We could have done something, but we didn't do anything. So we either did something or didn't do something that led to this other thing. How can I blame myself now for not doing something when I didn't know action was needed? Do you know what I mean? How could I do that? Right? And in reality, it doesn't change anything. He's still not here. And I think part of that is we want to look for somebody to blame. And it's very easy to blame ourselves, especially if we are very close to what happened, and perhaps something we said or something we did really set off something, right? But I mean, inside of my buddy's head was complex. There's nothing that I said or didn't say that caused him to be suicidal. And even in that made-up example, just touching somebody and pushing them out of the way, that doesn't cause somebody to have a heart attack. They just die from on the street. Do you know what I mean? There's other stuff, and I think that part of our blaming ourselves also comes from misunderstanding how much power that we have. I don't have the power of life and death. The stuff that I even if I knew my friend had these suicidal thoughts, even if I would have, taken his keys or something, that doesn't mean that it would have stopped him from ending his life. Do you know what I mean? I could have done everything in my power to stop him from doing that, and he could have still done it. I don't control the other person. I don't have that much power. So I would say, Victor, again, I don't know the exact situation, right? And I'm not asking you to divulge what that is. The best thing that you can do is to learn from that mistake. Not only to learn, like, how did this happen and stuff, but also what exactly was my role here, right? How much of this was my fault, especially if your mistake involved more than one person? How much of the blame is actually on me? How much responsibility do I actually have? Am I sitting here telling myself that this was 100% my fault when in reality, maybe it was 10% contributing, you know? And then in the future, that's how you want to treat other people, is whatever that 10% contribution was, find a way to not make that happen again. And if you see somebody else doing something similar, try to stop them from having that happen. Other ways that can help are to work with people that are in a similar situation. So if it had something to do, let's say, with mental health, not getting treated, maybe you stopped a friend from getting mental health treatment, and they ended up, you know, in a really bad place or dead, you know, maybe work with people like that, maybe get into that field, you know. If it's, you know, a case of you fell asleep at the wheel because you shouldn't have been driving while you were tired and you caused an accident and somebody died, you know, work with, you know, some kind of law enforcement or something, or go around to different schools and just do volunteer work talking about, yeah, we talk about driving under the influence and we talk about this. Here's why it's so dangerous to drive while you're tired. We had actually a staff sergeant who, that's what happened. He drove tired and he killed a younger Marine. And I never drove tired after that. He had to go around as part of his punishment and just talk about it. He was in the brig and he just had to go around to different safety briefings around the battalion and just tell people, you know, we talk about wearing a seatbelt and we talk about not driving drunk and we talk about this, that, and the other thing. We don't talk about driving tired enough. And because I drove tired, somebody isn't here and my military career is gone. This has changed that person's life, that person's family's life, my life and my family's life forever, just because I chose to drive tired. I've never driven tired after that, ever. So this could be something, you know, that you can do where you can turn one tragedy into preventing other tragedies. So that might be something. You know, in the case of my sister, you know, obviously every year there's a very dark anniversary. And I talk about it with my students. And I just tell them things like, you know, we always pretend like everything's fine. And you don't have to. Like, here's what I'm dealing with right now. And, you know, if you guys have any questions, you can ask. And sometimes the students ask. And I answer their questions. And sometimes I start crying a little bit. And I tell them, you know, I know I'm crying in front of you, but there's no shame in that. That doesn't make me weak for crying. It's a human emotion. You know, we're not embarrassed to laugh in front of each other. Why should we be embarrassed to cry in front of each other? You know, this is just part of the human experience, and it's damaging for us to pretend that this tragedy, this depression, this stress, this whatever, to just pretend it's not there and just go back, you know, act as if everything's normal. It's okay to talk about it, you know, because I don't want my students, especially from a country where the suicide rate is always fighting with Japan for number one, you know, in every age group. I don't want my students to be so overwhelmed with stress and feel like they can't talk about it and then end their lives. You know, I want them to know this part of the culture is not helpful to you. And it's totally okay. Here I am, an adult. I'm not just saying it, I'm doing it. And yeah, I'm crying in front of you. So what? So what? That doesn't make me any less of a teacher. It doesn't make me worse at my job. It doesn't make me a big baby. It doesn't take away the fact that I can pick any of you up and throw you across the room because I'm physically stronger than you know, most of my students. You know, that doesn't turn me into like a big baby, that just because I'm crying in front of you, you know. And again, not to just say it, but to show them, you know, through example. And of course, none of this brings my sister back, and none of this addresses how things were left when she died. You know, we had a lot of unresolved stuff that will forever be unresolved. And of course, if I knew that she was going to die at that time, of course we would have talked about it. Do you know what I mean? Of course we would have immediately resolved it and made it water under the bridge. But we were just being people. And people get into stupid arguments and they be petty, and And then sometimes they die when they're still petty, you know? So I can't fault myself for being human, but knowing this, maybe I can be a better human. So I don't have to feel this again. And so maybe in the future other people don't have to feel it about me. You know, where we left it weird and then I died and now they're stuck with this guilt, you know. So that's, I guess, just my attempt to talk to you about this. Because like I said, I don't know exactly what it is, but those are just some different scenarios. You know, I think going through life is a series of mistakes. And you know, if you say you're struggling to live with yourself, as in you're not sure if you should end your life because of this, if you end your life, there's no way for you to move on from that mistake. There's no way for you to ever make it better. So if that's what you're really concerned with, if you're really concerned with moving on from this, and somehow maybe you can't fully rectify it, but maybe turning it into something where it's less terrible, ending your life doesn't accomplish that. It just makes everything harder on the people that survived you. Like I said, with my Marine Corps friend, I blamed myself for 10 years. You know, somebody's going to do that with you. You're going to scar somebody's heart if you end your life. So instead of saying, all right, I don't want to struggle with this anymore and I'm just going to end it, that's not going to fix it. It's just going to leave it unresolved, plus cause more harm to other people. So I think too, especially if you feel like it is something you've done, right? Maybe you are very responsible, 50% or more responsible for whatever happened. I would say that the only way to possibly attempt to make this better is for you to try to make it better. Do you know what I mean? To face it, to not put it aside, to not plan out your suicide, to really face it. To really face it. Because let's say you did do something like drive tired, like that guy did, and you ended a life. Okay, and that would be 100% your fault. Sure. Those people, that guy suffered and died, and his family is going to suffer forever. Surely that staff sergeant that ended the life, surely he can face this amount of tragedy because he caused so much more tragedy. Like, in order to honor the family and to honor the memory of that young Marine, he has to live through the discomfort and face that discomfort head on. That's the only way to, like, the only honorable way, I would say, to address it is to face it. By hiding away from it, by trying to leave it unresolved, by resorting to ending your life, this is just running away from it, and you're turning a bad situation into a tragedy, or a tragedy into another tragedy. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all I got for right now. Hi, Gregory. One of the first things that happened when I left my faith was wondering about death. The idea that it's possible that there's nothing was surprising and comforting to me. No need to with wondering why it happened or what happens afterwards. The idea that things don't have a divine name and they just happen does bring some level of comfort. Yeah, I would say so. That really provided me some comfort too after I got disabled. I was always wondering what lesson is God trying to teach me? You know, what am I learning here? Why would God take away his blessing and allow this to happen to me? What am I supposed to learn? And I drove myself sick with stress because of this. Like, I stopped eating, and I was just so stressed out, wondering what is the meaning? sometimes things just happen. That's it. There's no meaning. And like sometimes when my students ask me, why is everything in the class always like Halloween, or why do you like Halloween so much and stuff, I just say, you know what, life sucks and then you die. It's up to you to make it exciting and worth living. Because by itself, life will kick you in the butt and it'll step on your neck when you're down. You got to make it exciting. So for me, having these little pumpkins and black cats and stuff, this makes me smile. It's something stupid, doesn't hurt anybody, and it puts a smile on my face for half a second. That's a smile that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I got to take it, This is one of those moments when I feel impotent for having a different first language and I can't translate my thoughts properly. Well, Leonardo, I feel even with this as my primary language, I can't transmit my thoughts properly. Translation or not, it's hard to transmit these thoughts sometimes, especially live. If I could write this to Victor, I would have been a lot less repetitive and a lot more eloquent, let me tell you. But having to just like, all right, how do I say something meaningful that doesn't also make Victor feel worse live? That I don't care what language you're speaking. That's a rough one. That's a tall ask. Yeah. This is so much of an interesting topic, massive learning going on. Yeah, I'm glad. A young woman left me permanently disabled when she drove through a stop sign when she was high or drunk. I promise you that her taking her life would make me feel no better. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Because what does that do? What does that do for you, Summer? Does that undisable you? Does that give you all those years back that you lived suffering? No, that doesn't. It just adds more suffering to the world and it removes zero of it. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you can suffer with the physical disability and the mental anguish caused by her doing this, then surely she can suffer with that fraction of that pain, that mental pain. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like if she learned something from that and you knew she was accepting it and she was processing it and she was trying to turn it into something better, where she was talking to other people about drunk driving or making stop signs, I don't know, more something like, if you're going through a stop sign too fast, then they could put some, those spikes or something, I don't know, something to try to turn this tragedy into anything that people could benefit from. That would be something. But for her to just be like, oh, well, this pain I caused somebody else is too great for me to bear, I'm going to end my life. Well, that doesn't take away your pain. And, she doesn't have to live with pain anymore. That doesn't make it better, That's, yeah, her taking proper responsibility would have been the best. Absolutely. Absolutely. I forgave her a long time ago. I hope she forgives herself. Have you been able to talk to her? Have you spoken to her about this? She made a mistake, a horrible mistake. She really hurt someone. I hope she learned from it, and that's all I can really ask. Yeah, absolutely. And for people that, especially if she was, for example, an alcoholic, she's probably driven home drunk or, buzzed, multiple times and was probably totally fine. Maybe she even drove drunk after this and was okay. And nothing ever bad happened. It was just this one time something happened, And I think, again, it's just us being human. We're lazy. We take shortcuts, and most of the time it doesn't cause anybody any problems. You know what I mean? But then there's that one time when stuff just goes so wrong. And we're just like, why did I do it this way? Well, because you did. Because most people do, Is it really something we should continue to beat ourselves up over? No. Of course, we need to fix it. We need to understand this is why we shouldn't have done it in the first place, and this is why I'll never do it again, and I'll make sure other people don't do it either. But to hate on ourselves for just being people, for taking the easy way out, for holding a grudge, for doing this stuff. I mean, how do people learn? You know, I used to be a very angry person. I used to drink too much. I used to do, you know, I used to say very hateful things to my siblings and stuff. You know, it was after our sister's death that my brother and I repaired our relationship. You know, it's not like we were naturally loving people that reached out to each other. Do you know what I mean? It's we had to have an experience that shook us out of that stupidity, because the stupidity is where we stay, you know. For my course the last course I had, because I'm working on my master's in psychology. We had to do a developmental psychology analysis of like a famous person biography, whatever. So I learned about Robert Oppenheimer, and this guy was such a douche. He was such an entitled little douche, and he hated women until he was put in a situation where he was like, oh, okay. He was like a little know-it-all jerk that everybody hated in one of his college courses, until people got together and they said, if you don't shut up, little Robert, we're going to all boycott your class, professor. And the professor didn't want to confront Robert, but he put like the information on his what's it called? His desk, because he knew Robert was going to come in and he would see it if it was on the desk. So he did. He came in, saw the petition that all the other students absolutely hated the fact that he wouldn't shut up, saw it, and he left, and he stopped speaking up so much in class. And then, of course, the atomic bomb. He was, you know, doing science for the sake of science, and everyone else be damned. And, well, we're going to try to do this science stuff with nuclear physics and things just to see if we can, and we're just really going to hope that they're not going to turn it into a weapon. Oh, they turned it into a weapon. And that's when he started speaking out against this stuff. You know what I mean? It wasn't like Robert Oppenheimer was naturally this like super kind guy who really loved people, and he knew how to put his own interests aside for the greater humanity. This was a guy that was so laser focused on wanting to accomplish a goal that he really was instrumental in building a life deleting bomb, this huge weapon. And only from that he was able to say, maybe I need to take a step back and not be so focused on me and my accomplishments. Maybe I need to not do that. You know, it wasn't like, oh, he was this nice guy. It was, he had to have this huge horrible thing happen, you know. And I think that's where the growth happens. Which might be the reason that people just suck, because this isn't something that's like we're born with, right? We have to suffer through it and learn from it, and only then can we hope to be better. Maybe that's why our species hasn't evolved. This is like a learning process as opposed to a genetic variable, you know what I mean? I'm glad that this helped you, Victor. You know, you can message me on, what's it called? Discord. What's my thing? Double espresso. 9310, I think it is. I don't know. That should be it. But yeah, I think that's just part of just us, you know. I think that's one of the reasons religion can really get people, because there's some stuff in there that just makes sense just as humans, and so one of the things I remember does come from the Bible, and it's like, when the millstone grinds you, it can either grind you down or polish you, depending on which like what you're made of, you know. And if you want to show that you're this polished thing, then you have to be able to take that challenge. You know what I mean? Let's see. If she had committed suicide, or if she the suicide would hurt those who loved her and the pain would continue and have a ripple effect, absolutely. If she went to treatment and turned her life around, I would be happy about it. And for her, I hope she took a really hard look at herself and eventually took on the responsibility and sought out, I'm assuming that was counseling that got cut off. Most of us have done something we're not proud of in our lives. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you know, I would say, yeah, there's just stuff, you know, that none of us, that we don't want to talk about having done, right? Because we don't want people to judge who we've become as a result of that gross learning experience. You know, we've become better from it, and we don't want people to think we're still that person. Which might be why some people pretend that this stuff never happened, and you know, and so on and so forth. Like maybe somebody who has a child and tells their child never ever ever drink, but they don't let them know, like, oh, I was an alcoholic, I drove through a stop sign and I caused this other person just a world of pain for the rest of her life. You know, that would be helpful to teach that kid. But if the parent is just trying to not be judged, you know, I don't know. Gregory says, I'm dating somebody now that makes it clear she doesn't plan to live past a certain age. I don't know the first thing to say to her. All I could think of is making sure I'm good to her until then. Is it a medical reason? Is that the reason? You know, I would say to try to put yourself in that position if it is a medical reason, you know, and what would you want from somebody? I think for stuff that is medical and we find out that a person is not expected to live past a certain age just due to some kind of genetic, you know, deformity or something, we want to treat them like, we want to baby them, we want to make sure they're extra safe and all this other stuff, and that's not what they want. Would you want that? You know, would you want your life that's already going to be so different from other people, would you want to further be treated differently? No, you know. So I would say, yeah, you know, make sure that you're good to her until then. But also don't let her get away with anything that is crappy, you know. So let's say that you guys are a monogamous couple and you've established that you are exclusively dating each other. And let's say that she sleeps with somebody else and tries to say, you know, oh, I just wanted to see what it was like because blah, 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 before I die, whatever. Don't let her get away with that crap. You know, but if it's something like, hey, for our anniversary dinner, you know what, I've never eaten Greek food and I just really want to try it because, you know, I don't know when I'm going to get another chance, and it just turns out that there's some really good discount flights to Greece right now. Maybe it's a little expensive for you, but, you know, if you can move some money around, something like that would be like, yeah, let's do that. You know, when are you going to get another chance? This might be her only chance. But don't accept stuff like her treating you poorly, her being so frustrated and angry that she takes it out on you, you know, that she treats you poorly because she's not you know, if she's having trouble with the fact that her life is going to be shorter than the average life expectancy, offer to go with her to counseling. You know, you don't deserve to be treated like crap just because of that. So, you know, I'm not saying she treats you that way, but I'm just saying on the off chance that she might, because some people do use their medical stuff. You know, in Summer, I know you can back me up with this. You've probably known some people that they'll they'll do stuff that's just so terrible. And they'll say, oh, well, it's because of my medical thing, you know. I knew a person who was really awful to their friends. And they would say, well, you have to stay friends with me because I have depression, and if you're not friends with me, then I'm just going to kill myself. And so this person that was their friend was trying to talk to me about how difficult it was to deal with, you know, what's going on. And I said, I have depression and I have never done that. Like, I've never threatened. It's not a depression thing. Like, this person is weaponizing guilt. Don't let people weaponize guilt. Okay? If they're weaponizing guilt, back away from the gun. Back away slowly. Back away from the weapon. You know what I mean? When I think of enjoyment or fulfillment in life, I often look to my animals like goats. I wonder, what is he tasting when he's eating the alfalfa? Is it delicious to him? Is it minty, spicy, savory? I wonder that with the cats, the biscuits, those little, like, the hard food. Like, every time I feed it to them, they're like, yeah! Arr, arr, arr. And I'm just thinking, is it really that good? You know, I don't know. And one of my cats, Crook, the one that hangs out with the migraine, he really likes drinking the tap water when it's running. And one of the other cats, Coconut, she will drink the water out of the toilet. And the other ones just drank the water out of the bowl. Is there something that I'm missing? Is the toilet water really good? I heard that animals can taste water, like dogs. I don't know about animals in general, but I guess dogs and cats can taste water, where for us it's a neutral taste, but for them they can taste it. So I do wonder, you know, what does Krampus taste? When he's yelling at me angrily, is he angry? Is he trying to, what's he trying to say, you know? Does he think about what I'm thinking, you know, what I'm trying to tell him, what I'm singing to him? I call him Krampus Lettuce, because I just do. Does he even know what lettuce is? You know, because I've shown it to him. I've said it's lettuce. Does he just think I'm saying his name again? You know? I've tried alfalfa and even the other grasses they browse on. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm missing out big time, and I don't know why. Yeah, I agree. They seem to be really going for it. But, you know, that's how their tongues and tastes have evolved, you know. It's the same with us. We've developed an aversion to stuff that's, like, overly bitter in nature, because stuff that's overly bitter tends to be poisonous, you know. So for us to eat a thing that might be delicious to something else, you know. But, like, for cats, you know, they don't taste sweet. So what's it like? You know, so for them, if you hand them a banana, they're just like, okay. But if you give a person a banana, it's like, all right, you know, yeah. You know, banana bread, the cat would be like, eh. But me, I'm like, hell yeah, banana bread, you know. There's actually this like an herb or something that temporarily blocks your ability to taste sweetness. And I love sweet stuff, so I tried it just to see if it would deter me from, like, eating, you know, like a bunch of candy or whatever. It's weird. It's weird. It's so weird. Like, to eat something that's sweet, and then to put that on your tongue, and then to eat something, the same thing. Maybe I should do a video with that. What do you guys think? Like, a video just tasting different stuff, like a fruit, a cake, cookies, a bread, maybe, ice cream, just tasting different sweet stuff, candy and chocolate. Maybe we can do that. So we'll have all this stuff, and then I'll eat the thing, and it'll kill my scent. Oh, and like Coke and juice. I would love to taste juice with this. Well, I don't know. That'd be fun. I think that'd be fun. How good could it taste? How good could it possibly taste when it's coming from the poop bowl? I have no idea. With coconut and drinking that poop, like the toilet water, I don't know. But I don't know. Maybe there's like a quality to it. You know, people they drink the Cafe Luwak, the coffee beans that come out of the, what is it, a civet? It eats it. It can't digest the beans. It poops them out. You clean the beans, and you make coffee. Maybe. That would be a good video. Some of us don't realize how sugar plays a part in our diet. Yeah. I think on the Discord, I'll put like a open poll, maybe, and then like an other, and I'll just get a bunch of stuff that you guys recommend and just eat it. Anything that's just super not sweet, like chicken, or like a piece of meat, black coffee. You know, there's no change, obviously, no change. It's just the stuff that's sweet. So one time I sweetened my coffee, and I added coconut powder, like coconut milk powder to it. And I tried it with the stuff, and so you drink it, it's nice, it's sweet, it's coconutty, and then when you try it with that stuff on your tongue, it's just really like creamy fatty. You just taste the fattiness of the coconut milk powder. Cool. You know, you just cannot taste any sweetness. So I think that'd be kind of a fun experiment. I don't know. I will have some time next week because it's Chuseok. It's the harvest holiday, so we get some time off. So I think I'll do that then. The Civet coffee, the stuff is super strong and rich. It's really good. That's the thing. I was just like, oh, this is going to be very gimmicky and just taste very regular. It's good. It's a good coffee. Yeah. As an experiment, we tried to give the goat grain, and he looked at us as if to say, I have 4 stomach chambers. You know, I shouldn't have that. Mission fail. Yeah. It's like, I got 4 stomachs, and none of them want it. You know? None of them are interested in this grain. I don't know. You could try to feed him, like, cooked rice, maybe? I don't know. There was this person I knew, this Korean person. They were trying to raise some pigs. And the baby pigs, they were very okay with eating ramen, but ramen it's kind of expensive, you know? It is in Korea. I know. Ramen in the States, it's like 20 cents for a pack. Here, it's closer to $1. It's yeah. So he's, you know, you tried to switch it out with rice. The baby pigs just wouldn't eat the rice. So he tried this thing where he put, like, rice in the container and then poured some noodles on top of it, like the ramen noodles on top of it with, like, the liquid, hoping that they would just be in such a eating frenzy that they would eat everything. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll just put a little ramen in here and then more rice, and they'll just eat anyway because they're just stupid pigs. Nope, they only ate the ramen. They just left the rice in there. They were not into that rice, which is too bad. Wait, what can't they eat? Not digest, but actually eat. They'll eat almost anything you give them sometimes. Which ones? Are you talking about goats or cats? Because my cats, I don't know. Krampus, he tries to eat everything. Don't you, Krampus? He's sleeping. Water definitely has a taste. Some people are connoisseurs of water. My sense of smell is also ridiculous. I think my poor puppy, knowing what she must smell. Yeah, I feel bad for my cats, too. I mean, water, like, we taste the stuff in the water. We taste, like, the minerals dissolved in the water. But we don't taste the water. Do you know what I mean? So imagine, like, you have an apple and you put salt on the apple and you can taste the salt, or you put sugar on the apple and you can taste the sugar, but you couldn't taste the apple itself. Just pretend that's reality. The apples just don't have a taste. So it doesn't matter. You can put chocolate sauce on it, you'll just taste the chocolate sauce. You can put caramel sauce, you just taste the caramel sauce. So it's kind of like that. We taste the stuff like any of the chlorine that was used to purify the water. We'll taste any minerals dissolved in there, like the salts, right? The minerals that are dissolved in there, things like that. But we can't taste the water itself. That's the difference. So different water tastes different, but we're not tasting the water. We're just tasting what's in the water. Yeah. Talking about goats. Yeah, I don't know. I thought they would eat that too. The goats destroyed the brown potatoes. We mixed with the grass mesh for them. They search for the potatoes. They appreciate the spot. Well, that's good. I'm glad. I love goats. I think they're great with their oblong, like, pupils. They're excellent. I show my students goats sometimes, like the Damascus goat that's in those goat beauty contests. That's a good time. My daughter's cat, Coco, is not safe around a loaf of bread. Some of these cats, man. Some of these cats. Who eats the bread? Krampus. You cannot keep bread around Krampus. He will he'll just rip open the package and eat the bread. So Krampus can't be around that. Chloe cannot be around cream. So if you have cake or something, she'll just eat the cake. She just loves this, like, sweet, creamy, like, layers between the cake slices, or the cake layers. You know what I mean? That cream, like whipped cream on a coffee. She likes that. She will even try to eat peppers. Not necessarily spicy peppers, but just peppers. So I always have to keep her out of the kitchen for that. Crook doesn't really like to eat much of anything. He's very particular about what he does like. What he doesn't like, he's also very particular. But it's like normal cat stuff, like wet food. He just hates it. Some of the wet snack, it's called chowchadu. He hates it. All the other cats love it. He hates it. He likes dry snacks sometimes, and he likes my hair. So if my hair is wet, or anybody's hair is wet, if there's people visiting and he hears water in the bathroom and that person comes out of the bathroom, he will, like, meow at them because he thinks that they washed their hair and he wants to lick their hair water. He loves that. If it's hot outside and you've got, like, a tank top or something, and you have, you know, deodorant, and you're just watching something, Crook will come lick your armpits. So he just likes that. I also had to stop cleaning with bleach because he will lick the floors after you clean it with bleach. I guess some cats do that. Apparently it kind of mimics a hormone that they're familiar with. I don't know. That's what I read. But he just loves it. But you try to feed him like wet food? No, doesn't like it. Coconut eats everything. She will often wake me up because she's just chewing on plastic bags. She just does that. And Choco, he's similar to his mom. He likes to eat that stuff. There's also this Korean snack called bongtigi, and it's like a rice snack that's like popped with high pressure and heat. So it's got like a very light sweetness to it, just naturally. And it's very crunchy. Krampus, Choco likes it. Crook likes it. Chloe sometimes likes it. You just give them a little piece and they'll just crunch it. I don't know. They just dig it. Would love to see a live on this. Yeah, that'll be good. Well, should we do it live, do you think? We could do it live. Why not? I don't like to do food videos by themselves because you only get one chance. So everything has to be good in one go. But the other thing is that, you know, I think some of the reactions can be funny if they're like played off of like other people laughing with you. But I'm just in my room by myself filming, not live. So I think doing it live would be fun. Yeah. Our dog got into some pepper paste. We used a disinfectant, totally edible, just spicy. And when it came out the other end, we could just see every muscle in his face contort. Oh no. One time Crook was around very pungent onions, and his eyes like swelled up just because the onions were so aromatic. Felt so bad for him. He just had these like puffy little, his little face puffed up. He didn't eat it. He had his face in it because it was next to chicken, and he was trying to smell the chicken, and he just got this face full of this pungent onion. This poor baby. Oh, it makes me so sad because like they don't know. You know, if I eat hot sauce on purpose and it burns, that's my fault. I went into this knowingly, but like your dog didn't know, you know. I wonder how certain things came to be, including the beaver secretion that's used and vanilla, raspberry, and strawberry natural flavoring. Yeah, I know, right? I guess what I assume happened is when they were doing all like the beaver pelt stuff, maybe some of like the French fur trappers, you know, they went to eat something and they tasted something vanilla-y or whatever, and they're just like, where is this coming from? Or they saw perhaps the native people were using it to flavor some kind of dessert or like a tea or something, and then saying, you know, why are you putting this like beaver liquid? And you know, oh well, you should try it. Oh, it's really good, you know. So that's kind of where I think it happened. Either it was I think it must have just been accidental, you know, because you don't. I think so. Yeah, I just think somebody got it on their hand, didn't realize it, went to eat something, and kind of put two and two together. On that note, yeah, you definitely should go have to keep stuff on high shelves. The catnip I keep in the freezer because the cats got into it one time and they got ultra high. It was bad. Like Choco, he's big. He dealt with it, but Chloe was like, she was poor thing. But yeah, maybe next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, we can do the taste test for stuff. So if you guys have any suggestions of things that are sweet or that I should just try with that, you know, like cookies, potato chips, cheese, anything like that. I'm sure cheese would just taste the same though, but we could try it. You know, there's a sweeter cheese. I heard some liquid, but that's just Krampus licking himself. Yeah, so just recommend it on Discord. I'll make like a post about it, and then yeah, we'll do it as a live, and that'll be a lot of fun. I'm gonna go ice my head. Thank you guys so much for joining me, especially since I know it's kind of middle of the week and it's early for some of you, so I always appreciate it when you guys are able to make it. All right, guys, thanks again, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.